I told you that this song of yours is stuck in my head. And what in the brain makes this happen so often? Because I get songs stuck in my head all the time, but I'm not constantly replaying movie scenes or rereading pages from books. I mean, even though I'm obsessed with food and I have cravings for the future, it's not like I'm constantly replaying meals in my mind. It's just always songs. Songs are the one thing that happens with. I think that's pretty universal for people.
Yeah, they're called earworms, from the German word Ohrwurm. Leave it to the Germans to have a word for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we know a little bit about them. They are universal. Something like 80% of people say they've had them. Many people have them routinely. They tend to be short snippets of a song, maybe 20 seconds or so, playing in an infinite loop, sometimes a whole song or a verse and a chorus. But most people aren't running around with Wagner's Ring Cycle in there, and
No.
or Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. And they represent a triumph on the part of the songwriter, of course. I mean, that's, for somebody to write a catchy melody, that's a triumph until it becomes irritating. There are cases where the song that's stuck in your head is just because you found it appealing. There are other cases where it's your subconscious trying to send you a message. Oliver Sacks tells the story of how he had burned a bunch of, he was getting ready to burn a bunch of old writings. And, he was done with them. He wasn't going to use them anymore. He needed to clear up space. He had never published them. He wanted to consign them to the fire. And he had this earworm stuck in his head for about a week, and he couldn't place it. And he asked a friend of his what it was. And it turned out to be, if I'm not mistaken, a Schumann leader about burning children. And of course, his writings are his children. And so it was a reminder coming up from the subconscious in the way that dreams often send us things in code rather than overtly. They send us messages as metaphors.
But so what is it in the brain that is responsible for this? Is it something that we know?
No, it does point to one of my notions about the evolutionary basis of music that I've written about, and Max Krasnow's written about it as well, and others. I suspect that if music is an evolutionary development, it didn't evolve for one thing. It probably evolved for several simultaneously, or not near simultaneously anyway. Or maybe it evolved for two or three purposes and then it was co-opted in other ways. But one of the things I think music evolved for was to preserve knowledge. So, we've only had written word for about 5,000 years, but we've been around as a species for a lot longer than that. And so think about what pre-literate life was like and things that you had to remember. You might have to remember where the fruit trees are, and, you might have procedural songs that conveyed knowledge songs that encoded knowledge. So how to make a watertight canoe, or how to boil this plant so it doesn't poison you, or a ballad about don't go over that hill because that tribe over there killed my Uncle Og, and they're mean, and you need to encode this knowledge to pass it down. And we had the need to remember things for a long time before we could write it down. And songs were probably the way that our ancestors remembered things. And so, in effect, music and human brains co-evolved so that the music would get stuck up there.
No, that makes total sense. Now that I think about it, things like the Iliad and the Odyssey
exactly
were once sung. They were you had bards. This was a tradition where people would remember these tremendously long stories, and the music served as a memory device.
The Old Testament was sung for, I think, 1,000 years before it was written down, according to the legend anyway. And then we see vestiges of this in our own lives. How did you learn the alphabet?
Exactly.
And how did you learn to count?
I don't know if I had a song for numbers.
No?
What's the song for numbers?
Well, it's politically incorrect now. But it was 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians.
That's true. That I do remember that.
And then I don't know if you remember this, but I learned my left from my right from a song.
No, I didn't know that one.
You put your right foot in, you put your right foot out, you put your right foot in, and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey. And that's what it's all about.